Hey there, Shalom, and thank you for checking this video out. In this video, we are going to explore a verse about heaping coals of fire on our enemy's head. Do you have an enemy in your life? I am not talking about the devil or about a struggle with a disease or other things. I am talking about a real flesh and blood person. Who do you consider to be an enemy? We are going to examine from a biblical perspective who can be classified as an enemy and what should our attitude be towards our enemies. By the time this video is over, you may have a clearer insight which will help you understand what your role is concerning people and relationship dynamics. Let's look at that infamous verse about burning coals to get us started. Romans chapter 12, verse 20. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. Apostle Paul, who wrote the book of Romans, is quoting from the Tanakh, or what many refer to as the Old Testament. This verse can be found in Proverbs. So Proverbs chapter 25 verses 21 to 22. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will heap coals of fire on his head, and so the Lord will reward you. Now, Paul was simply doing what most of the New Testament writers did, and that is pull scriptures from the Tanakh. Many have taken this heap of burning coals reference completely out of context. Some think it refers to our enemy burning with punishment. We do a good thing, and then the enemy gets punished. Well, after all, burning coals on the top of the head doesn't sound real nice. So it's got to be retribution of a sort, right? Nope, wrong. But before we get into what the heap of fiery burning coals are all about, we need to define this word enemy. The Bible has many words translated as enemy. In this verse, the word for enemy is the word phane. Now, it kind of looks like the word stain, but it's pronounced phane, and it is the Strong's number 8310. And if you read from right to left, which Hebrew is always read, you have a shin, the letter shin, the letter nun, and an aleph. Now, this word is the verbal root for the word to hate. When used in reference to a person, it's about emotions and discord. This is not a stranger. This is a family member, a former friend, a coworker, a neighbor. You fill in the blank. This is someone you have had a relationship with or have one right now. This person holds you in contempt. And usually when you hear their name, there's an immediate little twinge in your emotional center. You may feel a rush of negative emotions, sadness, pain, anger, hurt, distaste, defensiveness, to only name a few emotions. It's uncomfortable and unpleasant. Whether they caused it or you did, there is estrangement in the relationship. There is history. Things have happened to cause a rift. This is Sane, an enemy, and we all have an enemy or two in our lives. Let's go back to that verse in Proverbs. So, in giving food and drink, you will heap coals of fire on the head. What is this heap of coals all about if it's not about retribution? Once again, this is where it becomes important to understand ancient and current Middle East customs. Fire is essential for warmth and for cooking. It was common for people within a community to go to one another's dwellings with a pot designed to carry coals to get these coals for a fire, to cook for food and for warmth. This pot would be carried upon the head, thus heaping coals of fire. Instead of pointing one or two coals in the pot, points to a great blessing, as you are providing a substantial means to help your enemy live well. Providing fire meant food and warmth. Notice it doesn't say to be reconciled or to have a nice little visit. Some relationships are unhealthy and need boundaries. This is simply providing a needed necessity. Now, this fiery warmth of a genuine blessing, not with a motive for punishment, could warm up a cold heart or soften a hard one. It has the potential, at the bare minimum, to bring peace. This is all about an enemy within a framework of a relationship. This is not a wartime enemy or an enemy of God, which we will get into later in this video. Let's bump it up a notch. Consider Sane a person you'd rather not be around, an enemy level 1. Another word for enemy is oyed. Now, this is an individual who actively hates you and seeks to do you harm. So consider this person an enemy level 2. Let's see a verse with this word, oyed. It's found in Exodus 23:4. If you come upon your enemy, oyed, ox or donkey that has strayed away, take it back to its owner. We are still to practice kindness, even with an oyed. This is a tough stuff, especially when this person is an active foe against you. And this word is found all throughout the Old Testament as a word for enemy. Now, we are encouraged in Romans chapter 12, verse 21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. A great example of a Sane discord and hate morphed into a flat-out oh yea, the full-fledged enemy bent on doing harm, is the relationship between King Saul and David. David had worked for Saul for 7 years and had even married King Saul's daughter. All was fairly peaceful and well until King Saul disobeyed, and he was told by Prophet Samuel that God would give Saul's kingdom to another. Saul figured out that this person was David and began a campaign to kill him. He hunted David for 4 years, a man who had been faithful and loyal to him. David recognized that God had anointed Saul to be king and would not lift a finger to harm him, despite his father-in-law being bent on wiping him off the planet. We are going to listen to a part of the story being played out, read to us by word of promise, found in 1 Samuel chapter 24.
Now it happened, when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him,
"Take note, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi."
Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel, and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to the sheepfolds by the road, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to attend to his needs. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Then the men of David said to him,
"This is the day of which the Lord said to you, 'Behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as it seems good to you.'"
And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him, because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men,
"The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord."
So David restrained his servants with these words, and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterward, went out of the cave, and called out to Saul,
"My lord the king."
And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down.
"Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Indeed, David seeks your harm'? Look this day, your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eye spared you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe, and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you. Yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you. But my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancients says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A flea? Therefore, let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hand.
So it was, when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said,
Is this your voice, my son, David?
And Saul lifted up his voice and wept.
Oh, you are more righteous than I. For you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear now to me, by the Lord, that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house.
So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home. But David and his men went up to the stronghold.
David resisted the temptation to kill Saul and to allow God to be the one to deal with his enemies. You would think this would be the conclusion of this mess, but it is not. For even though King Saul has given a promise and said all those beautiful, nice words, he once again gets incited to go after David to try to kill him. And it's amazing to me that he takes 3,000 soldiers with him to accomplish this particular goal. So let's look at 1 Samuel 26.
Now the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah.
Is David not hiding in the hill of Hachilah, opposite Jeshimon?
Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, which is opposite Jeshimon, by the road. But David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies, and understood that Saul had indeed come. So David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, the commander of his army. Now Saul lay within the camp, with the people encamped all around him. Then David answered, and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab,
Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp?
And Abishai said,
I will go down with you.
So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and there Saul lay sleeping within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head, and Abner and the people lay all around him. Then Abishai said to David,
God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now, therefore, please, let me strike him at once with the spear, right to the earth, and I will not have to strike him a second time.
Do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall go out to battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But please, take now the spear and the jug of water that are by his head, and let us go.
So David took the spear and the jug of water by Saul's head, and they got away, and no man saw or knew it, or awoke, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. Now David went over to the other side, and stood on the top of a hill afar off, a great distance being between them. And David called out to the people and to Abner, the son of Ner,
Do you not answer, Abner?
Who are you, calling out to the king?
Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not guarded your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not guarded your master, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the jug of water that was by his head.
Then Saul knew David's voice.
Is this your voice, my son David?
It is my voice, my lord, O king. Why does my lord thus pursue his servant? For what have I done? Or what evil is in my hand? Now therefore, please let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, may they be cursed before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day from sharing in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, Go, serve other gods. So now, do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains.
I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Indeed, I have played the fool and erred exceedingly.
Here is the king's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it. May the Lord repay every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness, for the Lord delivered you into my hand today. But I would not stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. And indeed, as your life was valued much this day in my eyes, so let my life be valued much in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation.
May you be blessed, my son David. You shall both do great things and also still prevail.
So David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place.
4 years of being hunted without mercy. It must have been so draining to constantly show mercy only to be pursued over and over. David has the right attitude, though, in his heart. So even though he must have been tempted, he understood the principle of an anointing to be king. This involves Samuel pouring oil on top of Saul's head as a coronation into office. David, at this point, has also been anointed by Samuel and promised the kingdom. However, David will wait for God to put things in motion for this to happen. David was completely right when he prophesied to Abishai that Saul would die in battle. Now, David had a special group of super fighters called David's Mighty Men who did many amazing exploits. Think of them as the special forces on King David's team. This event, however, has a supernatural element to it, as it states that God was involved in making everyone in the camp sleep deeply. Now, it's time to shift gears. David prays some pretty mean prayers that are recorded for us in the Psalms. Let's look at a verse from Psalms 140. Verse 10. Let burning coals fall upon them. Let them be cast into the fire, into deep pits, that they rise not up again. It's pretty obvious that these burning coals are not a blessing. Remember, David was highly valued in God's sight. He was not reprimanded for this prayer or the others of a similar nature. Weren't coals supposed to be a blessing? So what's going on here? It's all about context and different types of enemies. David wrote Psalm 140, which we will listen to in a bit, at a time of great betrayal. If we were to back up to 1 Samuel 23, we have David and his men rescuing a town called Keilah. Saul gets wind of David's whereabouts, and instead of being grateful that one of his cities has been rescued from the Philistines, he's thrilled at the potential opportunity of getting David caught in the city. So David gets wind of it and inquires of the Lord, who tells him, yes, Saul is on his way to kill you. And yes, the city you just rescued will hand you over to Saul to be killed. Now David does escape, but Psalms 140, it's addressing multiple enemies: the Philistines, King Saul, and the people of Keilah, who would have handed him over to be slaughtered.
Psalm 140, to the chief musician, a psalm of David.
Deliver me, O Lord, from evil men. Preserve me from violent men who plan evil things in their hearts. They continually gather together for war. They sharpen their tongues like a serpent. The poison of asps is under their lips. Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from violent men who have purposed to make my steps stumble. The proud have hidden a snare for me and cords. They have spread a net by the wayside. They have set traps for me. I said to the Lord, you are my God. Hear the voice of my supplications, O Lord. O God, the Lord, the strength of my salvation, you have covered my head in the day of battle. Do not grant, O Lord, the desires of the wicked. Do not further his wicked scheme, lest they be exalted. As for the head of those who surround me, let the evil of their lips cover them. Let burning coals fall upon them. Let them be cast into the fire, into deep pits, that they rise not up again. Let not a slanderer be established in the earth. Let evil hunt the violent man to overthrow him. I know that the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted and justice for the poor. Surely the righteous shall give thanks to your name. The upright shall dwell in your presence.
It's time to understand the difference, to use an analogy between wicked goats and sinful sheep. The Bible clearly states that all have sinned. This is truth. But not all of us are wicked. It is a different category in God's sight. This is not to water down the evil of sin, but rather to emphasize that there are some wicked goats out there who take sin to the maximum level. They cause damage and death to other human beings. A wicked goat is an enemy of God. This is not a drug addict, a thief, a prostitute, a violent abuser, or anyone captured by and practicing sin. That's a sinful sheep, a category most of us fall into. A wicked goat, on the other hand, is someone who enjoys evil. A sex trafficker of children, Someone pledged to worship Satan and sacrifices humans and consumes humans as food. A wicked goat enjoys the scream of pain inflicted on children. There are people out there that have no soul and thrive on evil. Most of us, if we are lucky, will never encounter an enemy of the wicked goat status. Are we to help a wicked goat? No, we are not. Let's see this in God's Word. 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 25. But there was no one like Ahab who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel, his wife, stirred him up. Now, a little background before we look at the next verse. So after King Solomon, Israel was split into two kingdoms. The north was referred to as Israel, and the south was referred to as Judah. So King Ahab of the northern kingdom asked King Jehoshaphat of the southern kingdom, referred to as Judah, for help in wartime. They even made an alliance by marriage between Ahab and Jezebel's daughter and King Jehoshaphat's son. So King Jehoshaphat helps with the war, Ahab is killed, and King Jehoshaphat barely escapes with his life. Now we're ready. 2 Chronicles chapter 19, verses 1 through 3. When Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, returned safely to his palace in Jerusalem, Jehu the seer, the son of Hanani, went out to meet him and said to the king, "Should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord? Because of this, the wrath of the Lord is on you. There is, however, some good in you, for you have rid the land of Asherah poles and have set your heart on seeking God." So God was angry that King Jehoshaphat had helped the wicked King Ahab. This is a clear example of how God feels about loving and helping the wicked. Being kind to the wicked cost King Jehoshaphat's family dearly, as his son, who married Jezebel and Ahab's daughter, will murder all of his other brothers under the influence of Jezebel's daughter, Athaliah. And she, Athaliah, will eventually murder all of her grandsons, minus one who was hidden and escaped her purge of all the heirs to the throne, so she could rule the southern kingdom, which she did for 6 years. Psalms chapter 11, verse 5. The Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, he hates with a passion. Psalm 139, verses 21 and 22. Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with a complete hatred. I count them as my enemies. Now, some may have issues with this. They would say, well, God hates the sin, not the sinner. There are two things wrong with this statement. First, it's a man-made construct and not biblical. Somebody made it up. We are not separate from our actions. If you steal all the time, you are a thief. If you commit adultery, you are an adulterer. If you commit murder, you are a murderer, and so on. God does not separate us from our actions. We are what we do. Second, God does not hate sinners. That is exactly why Yeshua came and died for us, to deliver us from the penalty of sin. However, the Bible is clear. He does hate the wicked. The intent of a wicked goat is to hurt God, hurt his people, hurt his children, and cause the most pain and suffering as possible. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 and verse 8. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. There is a huge difference between a wicked goat and a sinful sheep. Now, don't get the idea that God takes pleasure in the death of the wicked. He does not. He desires that all should turn to him and live, even the most detestable child-sacrificing goat. In Ezekiel chapter 33:11, it says, "Say to them, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live." Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, people of Israel? The most amazing story in the Bible of a wicked goat being transformed was covered in the video, The Most Wicked King. And I will put a link for that teaching that Crackpots did in the description of this video if you haven't heard it yet and would like to. It shows the loving mercy of God towards anyone who truly repents. All right, so we're going to recap a little bit before I share with you a personal story about an enemy. We've learned that there are different words for an enemy and that there are different types. An enemy in our life is someone we are at odds with. It's personal. This person can be someone who holds us in contempt or is actively hating us and seeking to harm us. God's word encourages us to bless them, to heap coals of fire as a blessing. Then there are the wicked goats, the enemies of God, which we should not bless or help. Now, of course, this would change if the goat is in the repentant stage and truly wanting to change, but not while the goat is an active member against God. Remember the story of King Jehoshaphat. Always inquire from God first, as some goats will actually fake repentance for hidden motives. Now, most of us sheeple are not going to be embroiled with a struggle against a wicked goat. But if you are free to walk away and not offer any blessing to this individual. In fact, if you want to stay in favor with God, it would be wise to take on David's attitude. Now, I'm going to share a personal story as we close. My family has a neighbor, and we share a community well. There was a point in time, many years ago, where this neighbor informed my father that he was leaving for 3 months and was going to be turning his power off. My father said, if you turn the power off, my family will be without water. To which the neighbor says, I don't care. That's your problem. So my dad said, I'm willing to pay the power bill. After all, we were splitting the power bill. He goes, I'll pay it all. I will take care of the power bill until you come back. To which the neighbor said, it's my property. I'm turning off the power. I don't care whether you guys have water or not. And proceeded to turn the water off. So that left my family in a desperate situation of being without water for a while, till my father arranged to have a well dug on our property to get us off the community well so we could have water. In doing so, it created pressure in a valve, and I'm not a technical person, so I'm not real sure how to explain this part. But because we shifted to our own source of water with our own well, it created pressure on the neighbor's community, or our community well, which caused the neighbor's house to flood. Now, there were people coming to his house to deliver mail and to do other things for him, and they saw that the house was flooded, and because they hated him too, many people do and did, they did not tell him that his house was flooded. So you can imagine his great anger to come back at 3 months after the fact and find that his house was moldy, mildewed, and was destroyed, to which he blamed my father for his mishap, and thus started a huge lawsuit, which drug on for years and cost my family thousands of dollars in lawyers to try to show that we had a right to get our own water, and it was not our fault that his system overloaded. So eventually it was settled. There was an insurance payout. But during this time, there was lots of ugly, as you can imagine, going on back and forth between this neighbor and my father. Now, over the course of time, this neighbor, who is really disliked by the whole neighborhood because he's just not a very nice person, has developed Alzheimer's and will go from house to house trying to figure out which house is his house. And he does have his lucid moments in which he came to my dad and said, hey, I really would love for you to take me out to my storage place where I could see my cars. He has lots of antique cars and hasn't been able to see them in quite a while because of his condition. And he asked my father to give him a ride out there so he could just walk around and look at his cars. Now, my father, being a believer, said, yes, absolutely, I will help you out. Picked the neighbor up, took him out to go see his cars, and then drove him back home. So that is an example of blessing your enemy and being kind to them, no matter what they do to you. Thanks for watching, and may Abba Shamayim, our Heavenly Father, bless you and reward you as you go forth and bless your enemy.